City Council. I appreciate council members making accommodations or schedules to be here. We just had our city manager review and went a little bit over. That's why we got a late start to today's meeting. We have a single item on today's agenda, which is a request to name Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport Terminal 3, the John S. McCain III Terminal 3. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilman DeCiccio. Here. Councilwoman Gallego. Councilman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Councilman Valenzuela.
Here.
Councilman Waring.
Here.
Councilwoman Williams.
Here.
Vice Mayor Pastor. Mayor Stanton.
I am here. This City Council unanimously voted to send this request to our Heritage Commission. The Heritage Commission did act earlier this week and unanimously did approve or suggest that we do change the name of Terminal 3 to name it after Senator McCain. That's the single item on today's agenda. I'll hand it over to Councilman Waring to see if he has any a motion, any comments. Councilman Waring had the opportunity to work for Senator McCain for many years. Councilman Waring.
I would just say this, Mayor. I'm going to move to approve, obviously. People.
For a second. Is there a second?
Oh,
there was a second. Okay, now it's official.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
I would simply say this. People availed themselves of the right to come down and criticize this move the other day, as is their freedom in the United States. I may disagree with them. They were polite. I may disagree with what they said. But I will say this. I think sometimes when we do things like this, we confuse what we're trying to accomplish. As I said before, but rather probably inarticulately, this isn't about one individual, no matter how accomplished. When you look at Mount Rushmore, for example, when you look at Lincoln, you don't necessarily think of politics, Republican, or anything else. At least I don't. You think of the overarching things not only he achieved in his lifetime, but the goals. So, not being a wordsmith, I was reflecting on what I was going to say today, and it was something we have as a family motto. It's never quit. And it's summarized from a quote I'll read in a second. It's kind of amusing to have heard 3-year-olds say that as a motto to family friends with the appropriate scowls. But the quote I think of that I would like people to think of, because we're really doing this for the next generations. Adults have already decided what they think about individuals, politics, and so forth. We're very divided right now. So I would hope that people would take away from this something a little bit different. And like I said about Mount Rushmore, bigger ideas and themes. And the quote I thought of was this: never give in, never, 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 and nothing great or small, large or petty, never give in except to convictions of honor and good sense. Never yield to force, never yield to apparently overwhelming might of the overwhelming might of the enemy. That was Winston Churchill in 1941. And I would hope when people see the signs that are going to go up in a couple of months at Sky Harbor, I would hope when kids ask, who was that guy? I would hope that they would think of something like this: whether you agreed with him or not, he fights. Lincoln said about General Grant when there were calls to remove him, I can't spare this man. He fights. And that matters, fighting for things that you believe in. That's what I would hope people would take away when they see this, the signs in a couple months. And I appreciate the council doing this. I think it is the right thing to do, and appreciate the second to the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Councilman, for those comments. And the motion has been made and seconded. I do have one card, a member of the public wishing to speak, so we'll hear the member of the public first, and I'll turn over members of the council to see if they have any additional comments before we have a vote. The one card that I have is from Jumana Hadid. Did you want to come forward and provide any testimony before this council? Up to 2 minutes of testimony. Good to see you. Thank you for coming.
Good morning. I obviously oppose to naming the airport after Senator McCain for the obvious reasons. Senator McCain's wars had made us less safe and more vulnerable. And I am really worried about our kids and our grandkids and what they have to face in the future. With every war that he started, we inherited radical groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And those are issues that we need to look at them and not take them for granted, because obviously the welfare of our kids and grandkids should come first. He also accepted millions, his institution, I should say, from allies in the Middle East, such as Saudi Arabia, to promote their agenda and to create propaganda machine that will only benefit their causes and making us again less safe in the world. You might disagree with me, but I just need to shed the light of how millions of people view this man outside the US. He is responsible for the death and destructions of millions again, and we cannot ignore that. It might not affect us, you're right. They are overseas and they're far away and they're not the same skin as ours. But again, these actions are causing those radicals group to get stronger, and unfortunately we've been dealing with them here for the last few years, and that's not something that I think we should take so lightly. There are so many worthy people that we could name the terminal after. For once, I think Sandra O'Connor, she's very well deserved of this. There's so many Hispanic people that I think they are the backbone of who made this state so great that we could actually try to honor them by naming the terminal after them. The point is we could try to find people who actually take the effort to improve the life of a human being versus destroying it.
Thank you for your testimony. It's up, 2 minutes is up.
And again, you know, I don't say that. I have a great respect for Senator McCain, and I feel for
Thank
his
you.
battle right now because he is battling
Thank you very much.
the
ma'am.
biggest battle of his life.
Thank you so much.
But that's not a reason to reward him. I think if you
Thank
don't
you so
want
much for your
to hold him
testimony.
accountable, at least don't reward him by
Thank you. Is
naming
anyone-
this terminal after him.
Thank you so much. Anyone else here want you to provide testimony on the single item that we have before today's council? Going once, going twice. Did we lose Grant Wood's card? I can't believe he's going to stay silent. He stayed silent today. All right, thank you, I appreciate it. All right, so, he's coming forward. All right, good.
good
All right,
reserve.
good. Up to 2 minutes, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Grant Woods. I'm from Phoenix. And I just want to commend the council, the mayor and the council, and thank you for this honor to Senator McCain. I am a native Arizonan, and I can think of no one more deserving to join the ranks of Senator Goldwater next door at Terminal 4. It's been a time for reflection the last several months, and I think the main thing I've taken away from it is that we have been lucky to have a man such as him in our midst. We have a lot of great leaders. Arizona's produced a lot of great leaders. Councilman Waring, Councilman DeCiccio, and myself were lucky enough to work for Senator McCain, but all of you have had interactions with him, and we've all benefited by his leadership. I think he's one of the greatest we've ever had in our state. He's a hero. He's a military hero, and I think his service to our state and to our country has been heroic. I'll just say one more thing. I think anecdotally, last spring up in Sedona, one of the leaders of the Syrian resistance called me aside. He's a rebel fighter and been doing this for a long time and had survived. And he said, "You should know something about your friend, Senator McCain. We view him as our president. We don't have a president. We don't have anyone we can look to in the world who will always stand up for basic human rights and for the right of all people to live free, except for John McCain." And we look at him in that way. So I think not just because of his service to our country, but his service to the world, his link to aviation as a naval fighter and fighter pilot, I think this is so appropriate so that when people come here to our great state, they see that once again we produced a great leader in John McCain. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Woods, for that testimony. Any member of the audience would you like to provide testimony on this item? Going once, going twice. Okay. I'll now turn it over to the members of the council. Statements by council. Councilman DeCiccio, please. We'll go down the line.
Thank you, Mayor. I was lucky and fortunate in my life to be able to work under two individuals that I consider to be great Arizonans. One was John Rhodes, and then the second was Congressman John McCain. I got to work in his first office ever when he opened up, and Grant Woods was my boss. And if you can imagine what that was like, I mean, it was a kick. Every day was an exciting day. Every day was something about Arizona. Every day was about something about pushing agenda forward. And then there was a lot of horseplaying that also went on. We had a lot of fun in that office, but it was just an amazing experience to work for an individual like John McCain. And I see Paul Hickman here too, as a former chief of staff to the senator. And if you think of it, and I think Grant brought it up forward too, is that one of the things that his focus always was and is the focus of Arizona and the country. I mean, that's just what it was. I mean, literally, every meeting was about what are we going to do to make things better. He didn't necessarily say it that way, and I'm not going to use some of the language he used because it's politically not correct. But you know, people think I'm not politically correct. Or you can imagine what some of our staff meetings were like. But you know, we can all look at some of the accomplishments that the senator has done. I mean, that's just easy. I mean, just literally have to look down, and the list is longer than most of us could ever imagine. But I think that the true accomplishment that Senator McCain, and I get kind of emotional about this, is because when you look at his children and look at the way his children have grown up and look at the service that they're putting into this country, and then you really start to think of legacies. And the legacy that any man or any woman can leave behind is what their children and the people around them look and how they react to things. And all you have to do is, if you look at the legacy of Senator McCain, you look back and you look at not only his kids, but also the people that worked for him and how they react to things. And then that legacy will continue to grow because my children will take a part of that with me, with them. And then their children will be able to look backwards on things. That's a true legacy. If you think about it, kings lose their wealth over time. They just lose it. I mean, how many, you know, if you go back into time, go back thousands of years, all those kings and queens that are around, they've lost their wealth, maybe except for the Queen of England. But the exception of that, that's about it. Everybody else loses that. But what's not instilled further is the legacy each individual brings forward by the impact that they've had on every individual in their lives. And that is going to be the legacy of Senator McCain. I am fully supportive of this. I think it's great. Everything was controversial. It's just the way our world is today. I mean, there isn't a thing that isn't controversial anymore. I'm good with it. I'm beyond good with it. I'm excited to be a part of this. I'm excited to be part of Phoenix, to be able to name a great airport or a great terminal after the senator. I think Grant brought it up. Aviation was part and integral of it. And I'm fine with all that. But what I am more fine with, and I'm really happy about, is the fact that we're able now to reflect on the legacy that this man has been able to bring forward and all the people that he's touched, all the lives he's touched. I can't even imagine how many hundreds of people, if not thousands of people, he's touched, like the Syrian individual, that forever will be able to relay that back to their children and that's a legacy. And I mean, I think the naming is fantastic. But I think that his deeds, the things that he's done for our country, the things he's done for our state and our city are much greater. And we can't minimize them on just things. It's on personality and the people that he's touched. Those are things that are more subjective, but those are the greatest things that all of us can do. And he's done some great things. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Councilman Williams, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I was listening to this, and I recall when I very first got on the council in '89, we opened Terminal 4, and then the economy plummeted. And we had a major airline in the new Terminal 4 that was in dire straits. And I was assigned to talk to Senator McCain, but I was warned, be very, very careful. He just has a horrible temper. He's going to scream at you, he's going to yell at you, whatever. So I went and met with him, and he was so polite and congenial and listened. I think that's what was important, and delved right into the problem and helped us save an airline, save a terminal, and promote the city, not only then, but for the future. My most recent dealings with him, because I represent the mayor on the Luke Community Board, was the F-35. Now, people probably think the F-35 has no impact on the city of Phoenix. Well, they're wrong. It took a major player to determine how many and when and where the F-35 would be deployed. Luke is the #1 training center for F-35 for 4 countries. The relationships we're building, the amount of money that goes into the local economy, the city of Phoenix, whether they're building their house, they're buying their groceries, clothing their kids, living in or outside our boundaries, is huge. And he's the person that made it happen. And that's something that's going to be, when you talk about a legacy, it's not only the protection of our country, of the world, but has really done so much for Arizona and for the city of Phoenix. And I'm very pleased to be part of this today, and I want him to know how much I appreciate him in the past and in the future, and wish him well.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Williams, for those kind words. Councilwoman Stark, please.
Thank you, Mayor. When I first got elected, one of the first phone calls I got was from Senator McCain. He was so gracious, and he was very enthusiastic about my win. When I think about Senator McCain, he really reflects Arizona, an independent thinker, rugged, a love for country. He's just a great man, but what he really does is he represents this state, this city, and I'm proud to support this.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. Other members of the council, any comments? Councilman Nowakowski and then Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, Phoenix Sky Harbor is the largest economic engine, not just for the city of Phoenix, but for the whole state of Arizona. We have over 43 million individuals that fly through Sky Harbor Airport on an annual basis. The revenues that we bring in is over $333 million on a yearly basis. I believe we should have gone through an open and transparent process instead of just putting it as an add-on and hearing about it on the news. So it's nothing personal against Senator John McCain. I respect him for everything he's done and served this great country and all the veterans that have fought for this great country. But I believe we should have an open and transparent process where our tax dollars, individuals that pay our tax dollars and individuals that we represent have a process that they can voice their opinions. One of the things that we've been getting calls about is why not other individuals? You know, we heard about Judge Sandra Day O'Connor. Why not her? Why not Raul Castro, that was the first Hispanic governor? Why not Virginia Piper, that does so much for our community? And the biggest one that I've been getting, going to all these different Christmas parties and events, is why not the first Hispanic congressman, Ed Pastor, that has done so much for the city of Phoenix, from the light rail to the Rio Salado project, and also the SkyTrain at Sky Harbor Airport, and even parts of what we're building right now at Terminal 3, finding that funding for us, right? So these are the questions that I'm being asked, and the only thing I can say is that I'm not really sure why. I'm not really sure why we're rushing through this process, and we can't have a clean process where it's open and transparent, where we get input from the community. I'm not sure why there was only one name submitted. That was something that was an add-on, and I don't control the agenda, and I'm not sure, maybe Mayor, you want to explain why we didn't add those other individuals or have an open or transparent process where it doesn't look like it's basically a personal political gain for any of us up here. But I think that's what we need to do more and more, is make sure that we have that lines of communication with the community that we represent, and that this process is open. The second question that I hear a lot of is why, at the last meeting, Sal DeCiccio brought up making sure that we finish Broadway Road and name it after Martin Luther King, and that the city of Phoenix should have the responsibility, the financial responsibility to do so. And how much would that cost? And it seems like that's getting blocked. Also, we talked about naming a street after Cesar Chavez, and people are saying, why are they blocking that? Why haven't you even considered that or even have that conversation? It seems like it's being blocked. And I really don't have the answers for all that. So I hope in the future that we have an open and transparent process where we can actually take it through a subcommittee, especially I sit on the Economic and Downtown Aviation Subcommittee, where that would have been a great forum to have the public give some great input and to hear from the Grant Woods and and others that worked with them, and all the great things that Senator McCain has done. He's worked very hard within the Hispanic community back in 2006 with Senator Kennedy to create that Kennedy-McCain bill to help out the immigrants and start that immigration reform. You know, so there's a lot of good things out there that we haven't had the chance to really talk about and have that open communication, that open conversation. So I'm going to be supporting this. But I just want to put on the record that I believe this process Senator McCain deserves a process that's open, and there's this controversy that we have individuals coming up here talking shouldn't happen. We should have vented this prior to that, and it was embarrassing last meeting to hear individuals come and talk the way they did about the senator. And I believe that we could have avoided all that if we would have followed some type of process and not only send one name to the Heritage Commission, but several names. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councilman. The second Vice Mayor, do you have comments?
Yeah,
Please,
I mean,
go ahead.
or are you going to respond, or?
I'll say my comments before the vote, of course, please.
Alan, I would like to know what the cost roughly is associated with this type of change and where are the funds coming from?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, I am going to have Aviation Director Bennett come up and talk about that. It is aviation funds that would be used for that signage, since it is their building. He can talk more specific about that.
And Mayor, to members of the council, the funding for this would come out of the Terminal 3 modernization budget. The program is, as you know, is under construction, so we would task the contractor with placing the names on the exterior of the building as part of the renovation work that's currently underway. And the estimated cost is still being developed, but it's probably a rough order of magnitude in about the $50,000 or $60,000 range as a cost.
Okay, thank you. What I have to say is that I live a very unique life in many different facets of my life. And so Senator McCain is obviously an American hero who has served his country honorably and has represented the state extremely. And it's a fitting honor to recognize his long legacy and service of dedication. I happen to be fortunate enough and privileged enough to have been a child and have watched Senator McCain's political career rise to the occasion that it has risen, and has seen some of the impacts he has had in the community. And I also have seen the negative impacts he's had on the community. But that usually happens when you're in a political climate and you are a politician and you have to make choices. And I always believe we all make choices for the better good of our society. My hesitant of this vote is not about Senator McCain. It's about how this process came about. And it's about transparency. And it's not about a political gain. As many of you know, our council will be changing in the next 5 to 6 months. And there are several people that sit at this dais that will be running for office and running for a different office that need to cater to their constituents. But I ultimately believe that Senator McCain deserves this, and it is part of his legacy. But there are other people that deserve to be named after, buildings to be named after the city. Like Lori Paestawa, a Hopi who gave her life for her country serving in Iraq in 2003. Raul Castro, a county attorney, a Superior Court judge, a diplomat from Douglas, by the way of Sonora, who became Arizona's only Latino governor to date in 1974. Rose Mofford, a native Globe who became Arizona's first woman Secretary of State and governor. Serando Carrillo of Superior, Gilbert Duran Ortanya of Clarkdale, or any other of the dozens of Latinos from Arizona who flew combat missions during the World War II. My point is that many people of many diversities have sacrificed their lives and been part of this city and this state that deserves some recognition. What I'm going to end with is a story of my father and Senator McCain, because I know many stories that are privately told or I sit around conversations with my father's friends. And what I want to say is that he definitely is a maverick in the sense of Senator McCain is a maverick at all levels. And I think in his position, you need to be a maverick. But I also want to say that my father was a maverick in many different ways. And the two came together as two mavericks. And they were able to collectively together fight for legislation and change many pieces around our country that it is today. And so, in my great honor, I will be supporting the name change of the airport in honor of Senator John McCain.
Thank you very much. Councilman DeCiccio, please.
Just as a follow-up and just an explanation so that some people in the public understand what's been occurring, there's some of us on the council that wanted to get the MLK done. I think it would be an amazing thing for the state of Arizona, the city, to have a street named after Martin Luther King. We're one of the largest cities ever not to have that. And I've been pushing it, Councilman Nowakowski and Councilwoman Gallego as well. But, what I don't want to do is, get the two, in together. I mean, there is a frustration level from some of us up here over that because it's taken 3 years to get MLK. I mean, that's just like insane. It should not take 3 years to name a street after a great man like that. But on the other side of it too, the accomplishments of Senator McCain does diminish or do anything else that's related to that. I mean, they're all great individuals, and that's really what I want to point out, if I could, to some of my colleagues here. And if you want to get the MLK thing done and the Cesar Chavez, I'm on board. I will push for it. I will do whatever is necessary. If we need to get the city manager to give us a timeline, do it. I'm on board with that. I want to get that done. I think it needs to happen. But at the same time, this is a special day and a great thing happening for the city when we start naming an airport, or actually a terminal, after an individual who's done so much for the state. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Councilman Valenzuela, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not about politics, it's not about ideology, it's about leadership, and it's about doing the right thing. Senator McCain fought for our country, he fought for our state in more than one way. He fought several ways on behalf of our country and our state. And as a native Phoenician myself, native Arizonan, and frankly, you don't have to be a native Arizonan to appreciate the work of Senator John McCain. But that's a plus as far as I'm concerned. Someone who's always known of John McCain and the things that he's done for, again, our country and our state. I think this is a very small and I would even say an insuffice way to say thank you to a statesman who's given so much, and to the senator's family. This is also important, I believe, to the senator's family, for the senator's family, because it is a family sacrifice. It's a very, again, it's not enough of a thank you, but I think it's a thank you nonetheless. It's important for us to do this. Now, in terms of all of the others, Arizona is home to many great leaders, and I really appreciate that. And my good friend to my left, who I've learned quite a bit from, the Vice Mayor, Laura Pastor, one of the names that she did not put on, but I know was a given, is her dad, her father, Ed Pastor, who I have deep admiration for. And I want to be sure that this vote and my strong support for naming this terminal after Senator McCain doesn't take away from any of the other great leaders that our state has been home to. It comes down to a vote that has nothing, in my opinion, to do with politics or ideology. It has to do with leadership and doing the right thing, and saying thank you to Senator McCain and his entire family.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any other comments by members of the council? Councilman Alkowski, please.
Mayor, well, I disagree with some of those comments, but we just voted on some art displays at Terminal 3. Now, I know that now if we're going to name it after Senator McCain, is there some way to blend the story and the history in those art pieces? I'm not sure if they're completed yet, if the artists have been chosen, but I know that we're spending quite a few dollars on creating art pieces within Terminal 3, and I think it needs to reflect the senator if we're going to do that. And I think if we want just a name on a building, that's one thing, but I think it has to have some kind of a history where people that walk through it in 50 years from now will understand what he has done for the
I think certainly, it may not be through the artwork, but I think, yeah, first off, if the vote is in the affirmative, the vote has to happen here today first. But assuming the vote is in the affirmative, then I think it'd be clear that we'd want to have the airport have the opportunity to have some sort of interpretive exhibit so that people coming through the airport, if they have time, would be able to see information about the life and service of Senator McCain, and that will be dealt with at a later time. First, we have to get through today's vote. I'm make sure, Mr. Bennett, is that accurate?
Mayor and members of the council, as we had presented to the Heritage Commission, that our proposal will also be to work on a commemorative plaque that will be placed prominently inside the building that outlines many of the contributions that the senator made to the state. And that is the same type of recognition that was done for Senator Goldwater in Terminal 4 and is currently located on Level 2 in Terminal 4, a very similar display.
And one other question, just for the future, I would love to make sure that there's some type of community input in a process of naming such a big building or something that impacts the city of Phoenix, like the largest economic engine that we have, that we make sure that in the future there is some type of community input into this process, not just as an add-on, but something that goes through subcommittees, that goes through your basically the aviation advisory board also, that we have individuals that are not sitting on the council that are advising us on airport needs and stuff, and also that we work along with all those different departments that are involved with the remodeling of Terminal 3 to make sure that we're using those resources that we already have allocated for something grand for Senator McCain. And also that we don't do these types of special meetings the Wednesday before Christmas at 11 o'clock in the morning, so we can have more people come in and have more input. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councilman. Any other comments by members of this council? All right, I'll just add very brief. Oh, do you have one? Okay, I'll add very briefly that I know I speak on behalf of all the members of the council and all citizens of Phoenix that right now we are all praying hard for Senator McCain's health, and we wish him and Cindy and the entire family all of our best thoughts and wishes as he's battling this horrific disease. And we're praying hard, and I know everybody feels that way, and it's important that we make that first get that thought across. Look, the reason why I asked for this to move forward is because right now at Terminal 3, we have approved, the City Council has approved, and it's under construction, $600 million of improvements, and the airport's going to look very differently in the very near future. Terminal 3 is going to be almost, if not as busy as Terminal 4. These are great times for our greatest economic engine, which is Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport. And I thought it was appropriate that we do honor one of our greatest citizens, Senator McCain. The point's been made regularly. It's not about votes, particular vote on one issue or another. It's about recognizing a lifetime of service. Service to country, first and foremost, through military service. Service to country, obviously, serving as unfortunately and sadly as a POW for so many years in Vietnam, and then the decision of Senator McCain when he finishes military service to continue to serve his country through elected office, both as a Congress member and as a senator and as a presidential candidate a few years back as well. And so my decision to ask the council consider this I thought it was a great way to honor one of our greatest citizens who has committed his lifetime to service to the citizens of Arizona, to the citizens of the country, and to the people of this globe. And I was very happy that our council unanimously voted to support this and send it to the Heritage Commission. The Heritage Commission had their public meeting and unanimously supported it, and we had the opportunity to come back here and have a final vote on this matter. I think it's the right thing to do, and I'll certainly be supporting Councilman Waring's motion. With that, roll call.
DeCiccio.
Yes.
Gallego.
Yes.
Nowakowski.
Yes.
Stark.
Yes.
Valenzuela.
Yes.
Waring. Williams.
Yes.
Pastor.
Yes.
Mayor Stanton.
Yes, so by unanimous vote of this Phoenix City Council, Councilman Waring's motion is approved. That being the only item on today's agenda. Happy holidays, everyone. Merry Christmas. Happy Hanukkah. This meeting is adjourned.